Frank Bourassa, the man who printed over $250 million in counterfeit currency, a school dropout, no engineering degree, no background in finance, no job inside a central bank. So here's the question. How does a man like that manage to do something even experts struggled with? Something others attempted and got arrested for. Others tried and completely failed, yet somehow he got closer than most ever did. Not because he was qualified, but because he studied what everyone else ignored. And that's where this story begins. What separated him from everyone else wasn't skill, wasn't education, and wasn't experience. It was observation, extreme, obsessive observation. He studied the US dollar itself for months. Every line, every color shift, every hidden mark. He analyzed the ink placement, the microtext, the security thread positioning, down to millimeter precision. For months he kept studying it, over and over again. And while others tried to copy what they saw, he studied what others ignored. And that's what made him different, because most people were trying to copy the surface. But he went into detail, the structure, the system behind it. And once he saw that, everything changed. He stopped guessing. He started understanding. And then he realized something. It wasn't the printing that made it hard. It wasn't the design. It wasn't the ink. It was the paper, not normal paper. It was a blend of 75% cotton and 25% linen, a specialized fabric made for durability, texture, and security. And that's what made it different. It didn't feel like normal paper. It didn't behave like normal paper. That's where most people failed, not at printing, but at the material. Because even if everything else looked right, if the base was wrong, it would always fail. And that's when he understood. The system wasn't just about how it looks. It was about what it's made of. So Frank changed the approach. Instead of trying to fake it, he tried to source it legally. He built a cover identity, a fake corporate front, a convincing investment firm with a legitimate-looking demand for high-security paper. Then he started contacting paper mills across Europe, quietly, systematically, one by one. Most ignored him, some hung up, others became suspicious. But he kept refining the story, adjusting the pitch, tightening the details, until it sounded real enough to pass initial scrutiny. Because he wasn't just trying to print money, he was trying to access the one ingredient the system assumes nobody else can obtain. Before the scale, there were years of failure. Nothing worked at first. Attempts failed. Money was lost. Time was burned. He bought equipment, invested in materials, spent more than he could afford. At one point, he was close to quitting, running out of money, running out of options, because one mistake, one small error, and everything collapses. That's how sensitive it was. Then came the breaking point, the moment where everything stopped feeling like progress and started feeling like collapse. The money was almost gone. The failures had piled up. And for the first time, he seriously considered stopping, not as a tactic, but as an exit, because there's a stage in obsession where hope stops covering the cost. And reality becomes louder than ambition. He had no guarantee it would ever work. No certainty that anything he built would ever hold up under pressure. Just repetition, just loss, just refinement that wasn't landing. And that's when something shifted, not a breakthrough, but a decision. He stopped trying to do everything alone and brought in outside technical perspective, someone with deep experience in high-precision printing and security-grade production standards. Not for shortcuts, but for structure, for control, for correction at a level he could not reach alone. That changed the direction of everything. Not instantly, but systematically, step by step, error by error. Because now it wasn't just obsession driving the process. It was refinement under expert constraint. And for the first time in years, the system started responding differently. It didn't happen overnight. There was no single moment where everything clicked. Only slow refinement, iteration after iteration, correction after correction, small adjustments that no one else would notice. But he did. He pushed closer and closer to precision, eliminating flaws one by one. until the system he was building stopped breaking under pressure. And then came the moment, a final version, clean, stable, controlled. He placed it down, looked at it, then looked again, not for excitement, but for confirmation, and something in him went quiet. Because for the first time, there was nothing obvious left to fix, nothing that stood out, nothing that immediately failed under scrutiny. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like realization. That after all the years, the obsession, the losses, the isolation, he had finally pushed the process as far as he could take it. Not through luck, not overnight, but through repetition, until nothing unnecessary remained. And in that silence, he understood something deeper. He hadn't just been trying to create an outcome. He had been rebuilding himself through precision, and that was the real turning point. After he finally produced a perfect counterfeit note, everything changed. He stopped experimenting. He went all in. He scaled up and began printing in bulk, thousands, then millions of notes. This was no longer trial and error, it was production. He built a system around it, controlled, structured, and fast. The money moved across Europe, far from the origin point. Different countries, different channels, no direct exposure. The goal was simple: turn the counterfeit into real value. Exchange it quietly, circulate it widely, stay invisible. For a while it worked. Money flowed in, scale increased, confidence grew. But the larger it got, the harder it became to contain. Because at that level, nothing stays hidden forever. As it scaled, it started generating real money, millions. But he didn't show it. He didn't spend loudly. He didn't attract attention. He stayed quiet, low profile, controlled. Because at that level, visibility is risk. So while everything was growing on one side, on the outside, nothing looked different. No flashy lifestyle, no sudden changes, just discipline, control, and silence. Because the moment you attract attention, the system starts looking at you. And this is where it all starts to fall. Not because of him, but because of someone else. Someone tried to copy what he was doing, tried to recreate it, but did it wrong. Sloppy, inconsistent, careless. And that's all it takes. One weak link. That mistake got attention. Attention turned into investigation. And once that happened, things started connecting, step by step. The system started tracing everything back, because it's never the strongest part that breaks first. It's the weakest one. And in the end, it wasn't the system he built that failed him. It was someone who didn't understand it. Then everything changed. Authorities became alert. They knew something was happening. So they started watching, quietly, patiently. And he didn't know, while he was still moving the same way, the system was already closing in, piece by piece. They started connecting things, patterns, movements, people, until they had a name. And he still had no idea. Then came the moment. A meeting, a deal, something routine. But this time, it wasn't what it seemed. He walked in thinking it was business as usual. It wasn't. The moment he showed up, it was over. He was surrounded, caught, and just like that, everything he built collapsed in a single moment. The moment he was arrested, everything changed. He was taken in, questioned, pressed from every side. But he didn't panic. He stayed calm, because he knew something they couldn't ignore. There was still a large amount of counterfeit out there, unrecovered, uncontrolled. And if that amount ever made its way fully into circulation, it would create a serious problem. It would flood the system with fake currency. Trust in the dollar would drop. People would start questioning what's real and what's not. Because once people lose trust in money, they start questioning everything. If one random person can create it, then what is it really worth? Because value is not just about the paper. It's about belief. The belief that it is real. The belief that it is controlled. The belief that it cannot be easily reproduced. And once that belief is gone, the value starts to collapse. That's what made the information powerful. Not the money itself, but what it meant for the system. So he explained it. At first, they didn't take it seriously. It sounded impossible. But then it sank in, slowly. The scale of what he was saying, the risk, the potential impact. And that changed the room. because it was no longer just about one case. It was about preventing a bigger problem. So the approach shifted. A deal became the easiest solution. He cooperated. He helped bring everything under control, and in return, he avoided a heavy sentence, paid a small fine, and walked out with his freedom intact. Not because the situation wasn't serious, but because resolving it mattered more than punishment. And that's how it ended. In the end, this was never just a story about money. It was a story about systems, about structure, about how things are built to look unbreakable. Frank Bourassa didn't beat the system. He studied it. He observed it long enough to see where it bends. And that's what most people miss. They think systems are perfect. But every system has pressure points, hidden gaps, small cracks that only appear when you study deeply enough. That's what people call the matrix. Not a movie, but reality itself, the structure people live inside without questioning it. And this story isn't about crime. It's not about money. And it's not about copying anything. It's about observation, focus, and understanding how systems really work beneath the surface. Because once you see the structure, you can never fully unsee it again.